Alrighty, so we just got started. Sorry about the little bit of a delay. Let's get the show on the road. Alrighty, so hello, today is the final day for our workshop, Artists Finding Financial Freedom in Trees. And hello. It is very, very exciting. Today, we're going to be covering, like I said last week, we're going to be getting into resource extraction, and also we're going to be getting into logging in particular. Last week, we really touched on mining. Our discussion with mining isn't over. We're actually going to be getting more into that probably sometime next month or within the summertime. Like I said, I'm going to be doing a workshop that's actually going to be oriented just towards awareness around Sudan, and that's going to be with Yusra. So again, we're going to be touching on mining and Canada's hand in mining in that regard then. And so I need you guys to one, check out the official website, amethystlist.wordpress.com. And that is where you find all things Amethyst Maris. That's where you find my merch, find my products, everything, my lyrics, all things. My music's going to be migrated over there. I will be having a VR reality, AR reality of my art gallery. So it's basically just going to be like a walkthrough of a gallery, and it'll have all my paintings there. But until that's there, my catalog of paintings is up on my official website. And I'm just adding my paintings because I do have hundreds of paintings that I've done, but I'm adding my paintings gradually over time, along with my lyrics, along with other things that I'm also putting up on my website. So as you will see, when June comes around, that's in one of my songs, and it's also my grandma as well, Grandma June. But when June comes around, what's going to end up happening is you're going to see me posting on the WordPress daily, and I'm going to be making all the website updates daily, regular thing. And that's just because we'll have a more relaxed schedule to do that. Tropic of Qualia website, Tropic of Day Qualia, that is the AI art. And when you go to that website, that is mature content only, and you will be able to find all of my AI art and all of my AI merch and products as well. We have Panacea Cafe, the blog, and the Facebook page. Make sure you guys go check that out. A lot of the things that we cover here in this workshop is covered within the Facebook page, Panacea Cafe. Sorry about that. And sorry about any noise level or anything like that as well. Well, I have one final workshop, and that will be on Thursday. And I'm really, really excited. It's not the final workshop, it's the final for this particular cohort of workshops. Like I said, for those of you who have been in the replays and getting the workshops, so much gratitude towards you. One of the things that we will be discussing is on Thursday in particular is getting into the affiliate marketing and how we're going to start doing that affiliate marketing process together, how we can start making money together. I teach you all these things here, but how can I get you to start making money right away? And that would be through the affiliate marketing. I have lots of products that are drop shipping products, so it doesn't take anything off of me to provide the ability for other people to sell my products that are drop shipping products and that are print on demand products, you know? So I already have the products made, make your life a little bit easier. And then these are products that are all over $100 that you'll be getting a percentage off of as well. Okay, make sure you guys go stream the music. Make sure you guys are like, subscribe onto the YouTube. As you guys will be seeing, lots of animes are going to be going up on the YouTube, lots of other things. I am going to be starting a project called Red Mirror Radio. I have Amethyst Reflector Radio and Techno Fancy, which Amethyst Reflector Radio came out a few years ago. That was like a kind of like a predecessor of Amethyst List, but now we have techno fancy, which is the AI music, where I took my original music and then I put AI on it. But now we have something completely new that I showed you guys yesterday and I previewed yesterday with you guys, which is AI music where I am producing with prompts and then I'm putting my own lyrics that I wrote onto these songs. And it's really created some really great stuff. And those are going to be going up not just on my YouTube, but I'm also going to be putting them up on my SoundCloud. Some of these will be just plain instrumentals. Some of these will be instrumentals with some vocals on them, but predominantly most of them would be able for a person to record on and everything like that, with giving credit where it's due, of course. Okay, so we're going to start up this here presentation. Okay, guys, I'm so sorry. I had the worst technical difficulties I've ever had. I don't know why the internet just started glitching. Okay, so perfect. Let's get back into the groove of things. So the finale, artists finding financial freedom in trees. Like I said, this particular one is going to be focused towards on logging. There's going to be a lot of little different topics in this one. There's lots of little video resources and everything like that that's in here. So let's just go along and check things out. And here we go. Let's get a good look at all of that. Okay, here we go. Perfect. Okay. So trigger warning, please be advised, this workshop will discuss themes related to environmental degradation, exploitation, and the historical impacts of colonialism, including detailed discussions on the use and abuse of animals and lands, the exploitation of indigenous resources, and systemic injustices faced by Black farmers. We will also cover topics such as missing and murdered Indigenous women, violence against Indigenous communities, and the fragility of the global supply chain. These topics may evoke strong emotional responses due to their sensitive and potentially distressing nature. We encourage participants to prioritize their mental and emotional well-being. If you find the content overwhelming, please feel free to step away and consider speaking to a professional for support. Facilitators are available during the workshop to assist with immediate concerns, okay? Alrighty. Okay, sorry about that. The Wi-Fi just keeps cutting out on me over here. One of the things that we're going to make sure that we do, the reason why I have such a focus on this particular topic today is because a lot of this, when we hear about the residential schools and what's going on, this conversation then falls into what we're about to talk about next, okay? So I'm going to play this video here of William Combes speaking a little bit. Let me speed it up so we don't get flagged for any copyright if it's possible to be copyrighted for this particular footage.
Witnessed them, the sisters or brothers took white wrappings or white cloth and put them into the furnace. The Queen came visited for about 3 days, 2-3 days. I don't know how long it was. I think it was about 3 days actually.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull something back that he just said, and we're gonna play this one more time. Actually, let's pull it all the way back.
Totally out of bounds. Totally out of bounds, and me and a friend witnessed them, the sisters or brothers taking looked like little bodies under white wrappings or white cloth and put them into the furnace. And the Queen came visited for about 3 days, 2-3 days. I don't know how long it was. I think it was about 3 days actually, and a lot of children went missing there.
So something that I need you guys to take into account. He made this video probably around 2011 or so. He was supposed to go to court for what he alleged happened. What he was speaking about was the fact that they visited, and 7 children have been missing. He did not know what happened to these children. He tried his best to do the research to find these people. One of the things that we're going to keep noticing, and I'm going to be showing you it in the next videos, is the conversation of this denial around residential schools and the death of these children, because a lot of these mass graves that they've done excavating excavating for, they actually haven't found graves in every single location. They have found some, and then they found remains in some places. I'm going to be extremely explicit when I say this, that something that I learned a long time ago, as my first experience going to a grow up when I was very, very young in 2009. And this grow up was actually owned by a politician's family. And I won't say on this here YouTube which politician it is, but his family, uh, his father was a very big politician. So you guys will be able to kind of see who I'm speaking about. And for anyone that ever wonders, this is information that I share very publicly offline. Okay. And maybe one day you guys might hear me say it on here, but it was a grow up for a very, very powerful political family. And they were growing weed in 2009. And one of the things that I learned about going on that farm is they said to me, the people that were growing, they said, well, what we do with the chickens is we have our chicken coops, and because of the bird flu, nobody goes into our chicken coops for our grow ups for them to look at. That was great. Okay. So I was like, that's super cool. But they also then said to me, but the chickens and stuff that we're dealing with and that die, you got to throw them into the incinerator because sometimes they kill each other, right? Chickens can be very vicious when they're put into those kind of conditions. And they said was the beaks would still survive the incinerator. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? The beaks still survive this incinerator. Teeth and beaks don't get burned in an incinerator. What we're going to keep finding when we watch these videos is people are saying, oh, well, there's no remains. The only thing that survives in an incinerator, as we just saw Combes say, that he was watching children being blanketed up and thrown into an incinerator, the only remains that would come from that I've heard surviving an incinerator is teeth. Okay. Kids don't have beaks, so it wouldn't be that. It would be their teeth. Okay. So remember, when we're excavating and we're digging and all these things, and you hear this denial of, oh, well, there's not finding remains. He just said they were throwing the bodies into incinerators. Okay. That doesn't mean that you're going to find ashes and you're going to find all these things. No, all you would find then is teeth. Okay. So here's one of the videos that I was referring to, and we'll play it. Let me speed her up.
In western Manitoba, they're sifting through. This archaeological team is pouring over dirt from the bowels of an old church. It was next door to a residential school that existed here for almost 80 years.
So these are called shaker screens.
The Pine Creek First Nation hired forensic anthropologist Emily Holland and her crew from Brandon University to conduct this project.
One thing about doing this work in any kind of archaeological context is to be thorough and systematic, right? So by the time you're done, you can say, you looked at everything that was in here.
They're among the first in Canada to dig at the site of a former residential school. What they find could have profound implications for other First Nations considering their own excavations. Tell me where it is we're going and what's down there.
Well, right now we're going to go into the basement of Our Lady of Seven Sorrows Church in Pine Creek First Nation, and they have identified 14 different GPR reflections in here, and we're in the process of excavating them. Please go ahead, watch the first.
So what we're going to see, I'm going to fast forward, is they found several reflections. Reflections does not mean that there was any bodies or anything like that, but what it means is that a reflection means that there is an abnormality inside the ground.
14 people.
Last year, Pine Creek was one of many First Nations across Canada that conducted Ground Penetrating Radar Survey, or GPR. They hired a company with drones and other equipment to scan the ground near the church and under it. In the basement, they detected 14 what are called reflections, or anomalies. In the surrounding fields, there were dozens more.
There's 31 out here. It starts, there's a few here, and then they're up all in over there in the fields.
Brenda Catchaway is a third-generation survivor.
She looks so much like my mom.
Cool. She's helped organize the searches. She remembers the anxiety and anger here after the initial findings.
There were some community members that wanted to just go ahead and go in the church basement and start digging themselves. And, we told them, well, you can't do that. It's got to be done by experts. It's got to be like, what if we damage any findings that we come upon if it's human remains? And I sensed the urgency that we needed to find out for sure if those anomalies were human remains.
Taking that step of actually deciding to dig, of trying to confirm what those anomalies are, led down a road.
So here, I'm going to fast forward
I feel
to
like,
the end.
yeah, this is just one phase, so we need to still continue.
To give you guys a little bit of frame of reference, this particular dig, they didn't find any human remains. They only found the anomalies, but they still went and looked. Their biggest fear was that because they didn't find any remains, that it would damage the other excavations of the other tribes.
Well, Amish, Brenda's last thoughts there are really nuanced. I mean, relieved not to see human remains because it's terrible, but also concerned that people will take this moment and say, see, we told you so. We told you there would be nothing there. Can we talk about that? What's the conversation there?
So there was some concern in the community about the I told you so's. And we have seen media reports pointing to the results in Pine Creek as an example of some larger problem with investigations across Canada at other sites. The chief said he knows the results of this are now being shared with the world and with other First Nations. And as we heard in our story, he wanted the results not to be considered as a guide, but as a lesson to other First Nations communities. I'd call it Indigenous Ground Penetrating Radar 101. Don't let ground penetrating radar be your sole guide. But we do know the remains of children from residential schools have already been found in the U.S. I visited the Rosebud First Nation in South Dakota, where the remains of 6 children were repatriated from Pennsylvania. So yes, it was an American residential school, but these were not anomalies or reflections.
So, Wamish, very briefly, if we can, what's your sense about other First Nation communities? What happens now?
It's all been pretty quiet, but here in BC, the Williams Lake First Nation bought the land that a local residential school once sat on in their territory, and where dozens of anomalies have also been identified. Now that the property is protected, and they are interested in excavating. Meanwhile, in Pine Creek, there are still more than 57 anomalies outside the church in the field, but the community has not made a decision whether or not they're going to excavate.
All right, Wamish Hamilton, thank you for your...
Okay, so that is one. Now, the reason why I'm going into this again is this plays a huge role. Like I even said to you guys, like it was a really big game changer for me to find out this bad boy up.
It is going to be a little graphic. It's going to be disturbing.
A warning for the room, news of a gruesome discovery.
It is a jawbone fragment of a child between ages of 4 and 6. The bone fragment has been aged to be about...
Like I just said, the bone fragment, okay? What are we looking at here, okay? From what I can see, they're showing us, what did I just say? Something that could not be destroyed in an incinerator, okay? So for anybody that is watching this and has any doubts about what these elders have experienced and what they went through and all of the probably, to be very fair, coming from Winnipeg and knowing what I know about not just residential schools, but knowing about the Starry Nights with the police and everything like that, RCMP, all of the other nuances that contribute to missing, murdered Indigenous women and relatives and trans and children, okay? They're in two-spirit as well. There is this kind of like gaslighting that's going on, and they do this with almost every form of genocide, right? But don't let these people gaslight you out of this. There's a real denial that's going on, and look at the remains that were found. As I said it before, don't mean to be graphic, but an incinerator, teeth and beak, you can't hide those. So, and like he said, William said, they were throwing the bodies into incinerators.
The LeBret Residential School opened here 139 years ago.
This is physical evidence, physical proof of an unmarked grave.
This site and any other site.
The bone, verified by the Saskatchewan Coroner Service, was brought to the room in this box.
That same child would have been someone's parent, grandparent, and chapan, but never got the chance to live life and experience it.
Star Blanket Cree Nation has been searching for unmarked graves since November 2021. The remains were found during a site search, but community leaders believe they were brought to the surface by gophers.
When the gophers were excavating their new tunnel systems in there, they would run into bone fragments, they would bring them up, and they would just kind of deposit them on the ground.
The bone is the first verified human remains at a residential school ground since 2021. Kamloops Tishaquetmik near Kamloops discovered a child's tooth and rib bone, sparking a widespread search for unmarked graves.
For our family, is validation that we always knew something was like that here.
The further pain that our people are going through
have went through. Yeah, so by seeing, and not seeing, but knowing that they were human remains, it's just unfathomable or unthinkable.
Chief Michael Starr says he will consult with his community on how.
Moving along to the next one. Alrighty, so again, these presentations will be made available. I put a video in here in regards to floods, heavy rain, and extreme weather. I want to put that in there. It's a little random tidbit that got thrown in there. What I also want to do is show you guys this timeline. Actually, no. What I will do is leave this here in the presentation. You guys can watch this. This actually just came out yesterday, and it is the timeline of the burial sites and all their discoveries and things that they have found. And it's a great video. It just came out yesterday. You guys can check that out. I want to be moving along into the other segments of this presentation. Now, let me talk about resource extraction. One of the things that happens as well is when we have communities that are developing and they're building, and then these type of camps of extraction come into their areas, onto their land, and then build jealousy and literally will attack the people and stunting any growth of, you know, continuing generational wealth. And one of those things within that topic is we got to talk about Greenwood. We got to talk about Oklahoma, not just being focused on Canada and the aspects of how that contributes to missing and murdered Indigenous women, children, everything. But another aspect that we don't get to talk about too often, because again, we forgot about that, the dark-skinned Indian. We forgot about, you know, we have all this anti-Black racism within the Native perspective. And one of the things that I keep bringing up is Black farming, the deserts, the food deserts, the water deserts, and everything. These are happening to what people would say is the African American community, but people are forgetting that a lot of these people are darkest skinned Indigenous people. So this is part of the Indigenous problem. This is part of the genocide that is happening against the darker skinned Indian. And Greenwood was a huge, huge, huge part of that. And I want to just show like a little clip from this conversation that you can find on Native Land for Greenwood through here, because I want you guys to see this. He was very emotional about this, and I wholeheartedly understand.
Something beautiful, I think, about that. I agree with that. And I also, I wish people would for a moment contemplate, what if the founders of Walmart had their stuff leveled, right, stomped out, taken from the Coors Light, Anheuser-Busch. Yep. So just similarly, who knows what could have been birthed there? All these businesses that we know as Fortune 100 and 500 corporations, you know, real bootstrap, you know, American industrial stories that we hear, that we know about, that has created not just a couple millionaires, but the founders' children, the founders' children's children, the founders' children's children's children, legacies, centuries of wealth that started on a storefront. So which storefront in Oklahoma, in the Greenwood district, which storefront got burned that terrible night that could have been part of the 100, of the top 50 corporations in America? So just consider, when you're thinking about folks begging and getting something they don't deserve, the fact that we just don't know what could have happened. We know what was happening. We know what got snuffed out, but we don't know what potential got killed, not just there, but all over this country, where we've seen these recorded events. And those recorded events had the benefit of stymieing anybody else from dreaming and thinking about what we could have accomplished, because that same fate could have awaited them. So I just miss me with all of the jokes and the unearned and undeserved and all that kind of stuff that folks like to throw on these kinds of conversations. Yeah, because you don't know, because you ain't never had your life disrupted in quite that way. Yeah.
Okay, amen to that. So connection between logging, resource extraction, and increased violence against Indigenous women. The epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women is deeply intertwined with resource extraction, including logging, mining, and fossil fuel extraction. These industries often operate, hold on one second, operate on or near Indigenous lands and bring with them the transient workforces housed in man camps. The influx of predominantly male workers has been linked to spikes in violence, trafficking, and exploitation of Indigenous women and girls. Statistics and impacts. Indigenous women face murder rates more than 10 times of the national average in the United States and in Canada. They make up less than 5% of the female population, but represented 25% of all female homicide victims in 2015. That is from Greenpeace. The presence of man camps near extraction sites significantly increases the rates of sexual violence and trafficking. For instance, during North Dakota's back in oil boom, there was a marked increase in violent crimes and missing Indigenous women. Okay, all of these claims all have resource backing for these claims as well, for anyone that has any questions about these. Environmental degradation from these industries, such as deforestation and pollution, also disrupts traditional ways of life and economic opportunities for Indigenous communities, exacerbating socioeconomic vulnerabilities. Downtown Eastside Women's Center, that's their claim. So personal stories and advocacy. Indigenous activists like Tiny House Warriors have protested against projects like the Kinder Morgan Pipeline, highlighting the direct link between such projects and violence against Indigenous women. Many Indigenous women share stories of their relatives who have gone missing or been murdered, underlining the personal toll and the need for systemic change. These narratives are crucial for understanding the human impact behind the statistics and advocating for justice. Call to action. To address this crisis, there needs to be a more concerted effort involving policy change, community support, awareness, and education. Okay. Let's go over here. And we have another video to learn about these man camps and kind of get a little bit more perspective.
A new report by the Standing Committee on the Status of Women is examining the relationship between resource development and the rise in violence against Indigenous women and girls. This is a result of the calls for justice from the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. Now, our reporter Danielle Parody spoke to 3 Indigenous women. First off, can you just explain and tell us, what did the women you talked to have to say about this report?
Yeah, so I spoke with 3 women. Some had lived experience in working in sex work, and one is an academic, what their perspective was. One of the things that Pam Palmer talked about that she really liked that the report linked the way that contamination of land and waterways affected Indigenous life, including family life, and that had a negative impact on Indigenous livelihoods and things like food security and social and cultural structure. One of the things that she said that she didn't like was that there tends to be in these sorts of reports a desire for the RCMP to play a bigger role. And Pam Palmer thought it was very important that we remember the role that the RCMP have often played in Indigenous communities, especially issues of racism or even sexual violence against Indigenous women. Danielle Boudreau talked about the need for training. She really wants to see education for camp work. As a lawyer, talked a lot about how it's not a surprise when we have these communities that are full of transient workers and are in and out of the community and have no community accountability, that we see instances of violence or social disorder arise.
Well, Danielle, this seems like a very complex issue. What is currently being done to keep track of any reports of violence?
So right now, and that was one of the recommendations out of the report, was that we have a better job of the government doing tracking. Of course, the government can't force the private companies to do tracking, but they can certainly compel through policy or through agreements. And so Naomi Sayers spoke about Manitoba Hydro and a project that they have been tracking since about 2012. Any claims of harassment both internally and then any claims externally as well, and that they report those out. So everyone felt that there was need to measure these sorts of things and know what's going on, so we can track if it's going up or if it's going down. But it did take us a while even to get to the point where everybody acknowledges that there is a link between violence against Indigenous women and girls and resource extraction.
Well, you've already said a lot about this, Danielle, but what else maybe should our audience know about this issue?
Yeah, one of the other recommendations in the report goes back to the United Nations Declaration of Rights for Indigenous People, or UNDRIP. Among other principles, UNDRIP recognizes Indigenous people's rights to determine and develop priorities and strategies for the development or use of lands or territories or other resources. And it also really makes it clear that adequate compensation is important and that consent is important. So of course, because we're talking about violence against women and girls, you can see how consent and that notion of consent and making sure that we have rights and the right of refusal even is so crucial for the safety of Indigenous women.
Okay, so here, here is a little bit more information around the man camps and just basically the extraction of people coming into these places and these spaces and bringing a lot of problems, bringing a lot of things. Here is another video of around the missing, murdered Indigenous women. Here we go. I'm going to just speed this up here.
Which is an
And we're going to have a little
small solutions where they heard from
conversation.
advocate Diane Redsky.
Anytime there are men with money who are transient, you're going to have sexual exploitation of women and girls and some form of violence against Indigenous women and girls.
Redsky is the executive director of the MMIWG2S Center and joins me from Winnipeg. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So that comment was made in reference to temporary work camps, which are sometimes called man camps. Why are these a top concern?
Well, and I've been working in this sector for over 20 years, and specifically in regarding to my work on the National Task Force, going across the country and hearing from Indigenous women and girls, a common theme kept coming up around these man camps that end up becoming breeding grounds for predators to have full access to victimize Indigenous women and girls. And so these are, and everybody knows about it. It just becomes normalized within these man camps, yet there really isn't any responsibility held to industry to be part of the solution makers. And so it was really important for us to bring that voice to the Status of Women Committee as they start looking into diving deeper on understanding that really important and vital connection between violence and these man camps.
To what extent is resource development and industry in general implicated in high rates of violence against Indigenous women, not just in the context of these camps?
Well, and again, it is, industry's responsibility to, just as much as there are environmental assessments, there really needs to be the social impact assessments that really need to be the responsibility of industry, and government will need to make that happen because they're not doing it on their own. And again, most are not doing them on their own. I had noted only one example that was positive, that in 20 years of working in this sector, that there was one company in Quebec that was taking a proactive approach to address the violence. And so we need to be doing more of that.
Now, you mentioned the onus is on the industries. This is, of course, a federal committee. So what can the federal government do to help solve this crisis?
Yeah, we're really hoping the federal government will start doing some mandating of co-development, and that was something that I also mentioned at the House of Commons Committee. The solutions are going to lie at a common table where there is industry and there is government and there are those communities, and those communities will have a strong representation of women from those communities to sit at a common table to co-develop solutions so that they are managing and being proactive on all of those social implications as a result of having people who are only there for a short period of time. And again, I emphasize, it's been my experience across the country that men with money who are transient, there is a clear connection to increases of violence in the surrounding areas of wherever these camps
like I said,
are.
all these videos are going to be made available in the caption below. So a few things that I want to talk about. Let's talk about the intersectionality of things, okay? So we just focused on, we have Greenwood, where they went in there and they would burn it down as like the race massacres that occurred. Even in Nova Scotia, my grandmother, her earliest memories were of the race massacres that occurred in Nova Scotia as well. Things that aren't really spoken about, but called race riots, like Angela Rye said. Hopefully you guys got that part. But the thing is we have the Black farming struggle, where we have the darker skin Indian, the darker skin Indigenous not being able to access the Black farming, not being able to access their own resources for logging, for other types of extraction of resources. Then on top of it, one of the things that we're also going to speak about right here in this section, when you guys go ahead to check it out, you're going to see there is a topic of cannabis. I know financial freedom. I've said that we were going to talk about cannabis. We're actually going to be extending this workshop even more so we can have more better conversations surrounding cannabis. And this goes for especially for the youth working in Toronto, working in the inner city sections. We have tools for that as well. But I want to talk about how these things are all a supply chain, and how it's a global supply chain, water, and all of these things, all of these aspects of sustainable agriculture all be affected from these resource extractions of mining, of logging, so many different things. But I wanted to show you guys the intersection of these things. Now, when we talk about the missing, murdered Indigenous women, a lot of the plights that are brought up in regards to it not just being transient men with lots of money popping around, is they'll say, well, a lot of their abuse is happening within their community. And that is fair. But that is why I just showed you guys about residential squaring them, explaining that there's a lot of domestic violence that these women are escaping on their land to get away, and that's why they're ending up in these situations. Now, it's not because Indigenous men are inherently bad, okay? It is because they went to residential schools. These are abused peoples. Okay, so I wanted to kind of give you guys like some examples, okay, Free Palestine. Give you guys some examples of how rancid it is and how much it is. It's just disgusting behavior, y'all. It's crazy, but it is a pattern and it's systemic. And like I said, resource extraction is the #1 cause for genocide. And we really, 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 really got to start from the top. We got to start from the top. So free Palestine, free Sudan, free Congo, free Yemen. Okay. Here you'll be able to find my website. So sorry for all of the little hiccups in this particular workshop. Hopefully I'll be able to edit as much as possible. Here we go. As always, Chimikwich. And here we go. But hopefully I'll be able to edit all of this out. Maybe, hopefully it's a cohesive presentation. The internet cut out on me like 8 times during this workshop. But the thing is that this topic is extremely important. It's very, very important. I don't know if it was the Wi-Fi at a library not working or if it was the universe trying to say like, "Ooh, girl, this is a hot topic," right? But regardless, maybe it was the CIA agent cutting out my Wi-Fi. But regardless, we covered it, we talked about it. Bringing this kind of stuff to your awareness is going to be the most important thing. I grew up knowing a lot of these things, being born in Winnipeg, having a father that came from Kansas. My father was in the Army. My mom, her father was in the Army. My grandfather is Army. My family, all Army. All of my grandparents, survivors, and everything like that. So I grew up with all of these things surrounding me. It was always in my reality. It was always in my space to be hearing about these things and to have these conversations and to have these understandings. It wasn't until much later in my adult life, right here in recent years, around the George Floyd issue during the pandemic, where I realized a lot of my friends and a lot of people that I know and what I would have expected to know these things didn't know these things. And it's not a dig at them or anything for not knowing these things, but it is simply the fact that, yes, they did not know these things because who was going to teach them? Who was going to tell them about these things? So we can't be upset with people for not knowing, and we can't treat people as though they're being ignorant for just simply not knowing something, right? We don't treat babies like that. So, and that's not to emphasize anybody, but what it is to say, when you know something and it's basic knowledge or common sense to you, common sense is not so common. Talk about the things that are on your mind. Talk about how you grew up. Talk about your upbringing, because you don't know how much that will change someone else's perspective in someone else's mind. So as always, Chimikwech, thank you so much for coming out and thank you for being patient with me with all the little hiccups. Okay, have a beautiful day.